Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you on a Friday evening. Glad to welcome all our new affiliates around the United States of America. And if you want to dial into the best conversation in talk journalism, it's right here every night at 866-HEY-LARS. That's 866-439-5277. Emails go to talk@larslarson.com. I always promise to disclose my dog in the fight if I have one. I'd take a couple of pharmaceutical pills, but they're relatively generic drugs, and they wouldn't cost much to buy even if I bought them with my own money, and they weren't covered by insurance because they're relatively simple and relatively generic. But for an awful lot of Americans, the cost of prescription drugs is a major issue, perhaps even a life and death issue for them. So I understand the desire to have lower drug prices, but honestly, I don't think getting to it with price fixing by the United States is the way to achieve it. Rick Manning joins us now, who's with Americans for Limited Government. He's the president of the group, by the way. Rick, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Lars. I agree with your intro. I agree with that statement. It's exactly right.
I kind of figured you would. So why do you suppose President Trump is going to address it this way? Because people should know the pharma companies spend literally billions of dollars, an average of $2 billion, to get a drug from white lab coat research all the way to you can buy it in a bottle from your local pharmacy. They need to know that. That's what it costs to develop that drug. And when people say later, well, but the individual pills are, they cost 10 cents a piece to make, let's say, but they sell for $10 and that's outrageous. I don't think it's any more outrageous than suggesting that the $1,000 cost of an iPhone, it does not reflect the $50 cost of making the iPhone in China. No, you don't get to buy it for $52. You have to pay $1,000 for it. Why? Because there's a lot of research and development that went into that. People understand that, but they don't seem to get that if we cut the legs out from under the pharma companies by fixing drug prices, they'll say, fine, but we're not going to go out and drop billions of dollars to develop new drugs.
Well, that's actually really right on point, and I'm coming at this from a philosophical perspective, not supporting socialism, but the truth is, if you really want to have a cure for Alzheimer's, if you want to have to be able to get out of jail on this COVID thing, if you want to be able to continue the biologics that are being developed that are curing people with cancer who wouldn't have been cured 5 years ago, if you want that to continue, want that to expand, so we can defeat these diseases, then you darn well don't want to end up saying, yeah, but we're going to eliminate all the money that gets generated to actually create the research that causes that end. That doesn't make sense. And so there are other ways to deal with this problem, but putting an artificial price control, and get this, the prices that Medicare would pay based on this executive order would be the average of what 15 countries around the world pay for these drug prices. We're talking about people who have controlled costs, who government dictates what the price can be. So we're going to let other countries dictate what the price will be in America for medicines and essentially outsource that. It doesn't make sense for an America First president to do that.
I mean, I got to tell you, Rick, I think there's a solution, but I tend to be kind of brutal about this because I don't know. Like I said, what ails me now ain't too much, but I don't know what might ail me in 2 years or 5 years or 10. And I do want a vaccine for the China virus. So what I'd like to say is if you want to pass a law and say American drug companies may only sell pharmaceuticals to other countries at the price it's sold for in the United States, or to other socialized medicine systems at the price it's sold to here. So if Americans have to pay $10 a pill, then France and Canada pay $10 a pill. And when they carp about it, you say, don't worry, it will come down, because if all of us start paying the same amount, then the price overseas will go up some, and the price locally will go down some, and at some point we'll hit a market medium. Because the crazy thing is, Americans are paying for all the R&D to make the drugs, and we're paying it in our actual drug prices, and then we're giving this super deal to all these socialist countries that say we're not going to buy your drug unless you sell it to us at whatever price we dictate. I think Americans should say, hold on a second. How does France or Canada, for example, right next door, get away with saying our people should pay $1 a pill, but your people should pay 10, so they pay for all the R&D? I would think most Americans would be insulted by that kind of idea. Why do we have to pay the R&D costs? Why don't you share it? Now, there may be some exceptions to that. If you're selling to some dirt poor third world country, okay, we can figure out charitable, ways to take care of that, either by donations from private groups or some other way. But let's make all the developed countries pay the real price. And if they do, if it evens out that, well, Canada, who's now paying $1 and we pay $10 for a pill, all of a sudden Canada's paying $5, still a pretty good deal for a life-saving or life-changing drug, and Americans can pay $5 and make it equitable that way. Isn't there a way to do that? Although I don't want to get there through legislation. I'd rather get through the private marketplace.
Yeah, the challenge is obviously kind of like GlaxoSmithKline is based in Great Britain, and Bayer is in Germany, and so these companies aren't all in America. The research gets done here. The research gets exported here, and so that's a challenge with that theory. But I like the general place you're going with that. Let me give you a simple answer, and this may seem really trite, but you mentioned it's actually $2.6 billion to get a drug from the inception to the pharmacy, and it takes between 10 to 12 years off of the patent life on the drug. Since that gives you 8 to 10 years of active patent life, and obviously, that's how long before it goes generic, just to put it in simple terms. What that means is that they have to, whoever manufactures the drug has to go down a pathway to try to figure out how to make their money in a very short period of time. And what's more, if you sit there and you deal with the FDA and the morass that's the FDA, streamline processes so you're able to actually bring drugs to market more rapidly and less expensively. At that point, you deal with it on the cost end, because a lot of the costs are built into this. It isn't a matter of the materials. You have to be very smart to figure it out, but the process itself to get to market is so onerous that it drives the costs up to such a degree that Americans don't want to pay it. But if somebody isn't paying it, then who's going to develop the drug for Alzheimer's?
No, I'm with you. And Rick, I would do it two ways. I mean, one way, just as you suggest, say, let's streamline the process. It shouldn't take 12 years to get there. But when you get there, maybe we start to say, listen, if it takes you 10 years instead of 12, that cuts some of the cost off. And when you get there, your patent, that's the protection time, lasts. The patent starts at that point. Usually the patent has to start at the beginning of the R&D process. So that means your patent began and ran during the whole 12 years. As you said, if I have $2.6 billion to recover and I have 8 years to recover it, and you can extend that to 20 years, all of a sudden I don't have to charge as much for each one of the pills. Now, there's a problem with that I already realize, and that is when Glaxo comes out with a brand new drug and they say, well, we've got 20 years of patent protection. The problem is the world's moving along so quickly. When some smart company comes up with something that's even better for that disease than your drug 5 years from now, all of a sudden your drug stops selling. So you can't count on it selling well for 20 years and recovering your costs. I don't know how you solve that one, though.
Well, the fact is that all these drugs are in development for a long time, and competition is good. If you risk and you say I'm going to risk $1 billion to bring a drug to market, and somebody else comes out. If you've got Viagra and somebody else comes out with Cialis, you know what? They compete in the marketplace, and they split the dollars for that. I'm using something everybody knows about it from advertising.
Sure.
But competition always is good, and so that is actually a good thing. If somebody's developing something because they see a market and they've got a better idea, there should not be one treatment. The more treatments on the market, the more options doctors have and patients have, the better opportunity we have. We have affordable options and competitive options. So that's not to me a problem to me.
What do you think about extending the patent protection, though? What do you think about that idea in general?
I think extending a patent protection makes a lot of sense.
And it's cheap. It doesn't cost anything, does it?
It doesn't cost anything. Now the downside on that is that your generics don't come to market as early, and so there'll be people say, well, you're actually increasing the cost over a longer period of time. But what you're really doing is you're extending the cost over a longer period of time, and so you're lowering the overall cost of it, and you're opening up the door for competitors to come in and defeat and win the marketplace.
Absolutely. Rick Manning from Americans for Limited Government. Have a great weekend, Rick. Thanks so very much. Coming up, jobless benefits for Americans pushed out of work, and the Congress hasn't acted yet? We'll talk about it next.
Lars Larson Show.